Hey guys, tonight we're heading back, way back, to ancient Rome. Not for a Senate hearing, not to fight a gladiator. No, you've been invited to the most oddly chaotic, slightly glamorous, moderately smelly social event of the Roman calendar. An upper-class Roman sleepover during the festival of Saturnalia. Think togas, olives, philosophical shouting, and at least one goat that shouldn't be here. You're trudging up a winding dirt road, the sun just beginning to melt into the horizon behind rows of whispering cypress trees. The sky blushes purple and gold. Cicadas start their night shift. And in the distance, you spot your destination, a sprawling countryside villa owned by your semi-famous Uncle Lucius. It's got columns, some real, some painted on. Statues of minor gods you're pretty sure were made up, and a scent in the air that hints at both roasting boar and spilled wine. You probably won't survive this weekend, let's be honest. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm always curious which corners of the world we're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. As you step into the villa's outer courtyard, warm oil lamps flicker in glass bowls, casting sleepy shadows on mosaic tiles. There's the faint crackle of a roasting fire, and the air smells of pine resin, beeswax, and maybe goat again. You're just in time for Saturnalia, Rome's ancient winter festival of reversal and revelry. Roles flip, rules loosen, and your job is to survive the most luxurious kind of chaos. A servant in a toga that's just a bit too short greets you. He places a waxy garland on your head. It's suspiciously sticky, like someone dipped it in honey, and murmurs a welcome in Latin with precisely zero sincerity. You're shown to the atrium, the main entry room, where a large mosaic of Neptune rides an awkwardly chubby dolphin. A statue of Jupiter watches you with judgmental marble eyes. Don't worry, he'll loosen up after a few toasts. Guests begin to arrive. You hear sandals slapping against the stone floor, greetings echoing off the walls, and the unmistakable clatter of someone dropping a tray of figs. People hug with theatrical enthusiasm, and you're swept into the crowd. The toga game is strong tonight. Everyone is wrapped in layers of linen like human croissants. There's always that one guy who takes it too far and wears his inside out because it's Saturnalia. And you find him immediately. His name is Gaius. He brought his own pillow. Servants dart between guests, offering small cups of spiced wine and suspiciously shiny olives. In a corner, someone is playing a lyre, mostly in tune. There's a platter of appetizers featuring anchovy-stuffed dates and pickled walnuts. You take one to be polite. It's chewy, very chewy. Uncle Lucius appears at last, wearing a golden laurel crown and an expression that says, "I will give 3 toasts tonight, whether you want them or not." He's a former quaestor, which means he once managed public funds and now uses that as an excuse to talk too much. He claps you on the shoulder and informs you that tonight there will be games, entertainment, intellectual debate, and a light spiritual summoning, nothing major. You nod, smile, And try not to make eye contact with the goat tied near the hearth. It's wearing a bell and looks like it knows something. Outside, the stars blink to life. The courtyard echoes with laughter. Occasional coughing. Roman wine hits hard. And the shuffling of guests trying to find the warmest spots indoors. Saturnalia is all about controlled mischief. Slaves are treated like royalty for a night. Children are allowed to pelt senators with pine cones. And absolutely no one is allowed to act their age. You're ushered into the triclinium, the dining room, where couches are arranged in a tight U shape around a low table. You're expected to eat lying down, propped on your left elbow like a philosophical lizard. It sounds restful. It's not. Within 5 minutes, your arm falls asleep. But for now, you're still in the atrium, and it's buzzing with expectation. A fortune teller has set up near the impluvium, offering one-sentence destinies in exchange for raisins. Someone's flute case has already been misplaced, and 2 guests are debating whether a dream about figs counts as an omen. Historians still argue whether Saturnalia was mostly wholesome fun or a semi-organized collapse of order. But from the look of things tonight, it's clearly both. The rules are unwritten, the vibe is luxury meets improv, and you're already questioning your life choices, just as the Romans intended. A servant offers you a bowl of warm rose water for your hands. You pretend you know what to do with it and gently dunk your fingertips like you're testing the bath. Behind you, someone is dramatically quoting Horace. In the corner, someone else is trying to juggle oranges. You take a deep breath. The night has barely begun. The guest list, you quickly realize, is not so much curated as it is cobbled together from every corner of Roman society with a loose invitation and a strong wine incentive. You sit sideways on a velvety couch. Well, velvety if you squint hard and ignore the suspicious stain shaped like Britannia, and begin to absorb the personalities drifting in around you like perfumed fog. Let's begin with Senator Publius Calpurnius, your uncle's old friend who smells faintly of library dust and ambition. He enters with the posture of a man who's very aware he's important, even if no one's asked him anything in years. His toga is flawlessly draped, which is a miracle, because most people these days need a servant just to keep the hem out of soup. Publius claims he once debated Cicero's nephew and won. No one has the heart to correct him. Then there's Sabina, an aging poetess who insists that the moon speaks directly to her in dactylic hexameter. She arrives wearing 11 rings on one hand and trailing a tiny dog named Scipio Minor. He wears a wreath too, which he promptly eats. You spot a Greek philosopher in the corner, scribbling in wax tablets and shaking his head at the decor. He introduces himself as Telesarchus and immediately begins questioning your understanding of the soul. You nod thoughtfully and wonder if there's more wine. The slaves tonight are treated like honored guests. It's Saturnalia after all, and they're absolutely loving it. One, named Rufus, is already lounging in Uncle Lucius's best chair, sipping wine through a hollowed-out fig. He grins at you and toasts to temporary equality before belching theatrically. You toast back with your half-finished olive. Then comes the horospex, a professional fortune teller specializing in reading the entrails of sacrificed animals. She's introduced only as Calvina, and she's wearing something between a priest's robe and a theatrical curtain. Around her, just when you think things can't get more eclectic, the door swings open with dramatic flair, and in walks a man in gold-trimmed boots, a tunic embroidered with Saturn himself, and an expression that says he hasn't slept since Julius Caesar was fashionable. This is Lucilius the Mime. He never speaks, communicates only in interpretive gesture, and somehow conveys that he's both delighted and insulted to be here. Historians still debate how these sleepovers, especially during Saturnalia, blended the classes so effortlessly. While strict social hierarchies ruled Roman life, for these few days, the villa became a temporary republic of silliness. Servants scolded masters, children interrupted philosophers, and no one batted an eye if a senator shared a bean stew with a baker's apprentice. Back in the atrium, the volume rises. Someone's trying to balance an amphora on their head while quoting Virgil. Another has mistaken the family bust of Claudius for a coat rack. Guests lean on columns, sip spiced wine, and eye each other for gossip potential. You pass a group discussing the new bathhouse in Ostia. Apparently, it has marble floors, heated walls, and one terrifying statue of Neptune that no one likes to bathe near. The eyes follow you, someone whispers. A small, theatrical shudder ripples through the group. You nod sagely. The topic shifts to rumors. Who's in debt? Who's secretly Gaulish? And who once tried to bribe a Vestal virgin with oysters? You smile politely and mentally add Roman gossip to your list of deeply immersive sleep deterrents. A woman in a seafoam blue stola leans in and asks what you think of the emperor's latest tax on beehives. You say something vague about honey sovereignty. She nods as if you've said something deeply meaningful. She may be 3 cups of wine in. Someone starts playing the panpipes, not well, but passionately. Lucilius the Mime dances beside him, miming heartbreak and fakes. A servant with a wine jug trips, spills a splash on Senator Publius, who waves it off like a casual baptism. "Let Bacchus bless my toga," he declares. Everywhere you look, conversations bloom and wither like gladiolus petals in the forum sun. There are pockets of poetry readings, areas for arm wrestling, and one corner where 3 people are arguing whether dreams come from the liver or the spleen. Calvina grins ominously at that one. There's something oddly comforting about the chaos. You aren't expected to do anything but observe, nibble, and occasionally pretend you remember your Latin declensions. For now, you lean back, let the warmth of the oil lamps blur the sharp edges of the room, and listen. Outside, the moon climbs lazily across the Roman sky. Somewhere near the kitchens, a goat bleats again. You don't know if that's part of the entertainment or just the goat being dramatic. You do know that the real chaos hasn't even started yet. You haven't even made it to dinner, and already things are unraveling in the most delightful way. In true Roman fashion, pre-dinner is a meal unto itself, one consisting mostly of awkward introductions, wine-induced giggling, and toga-based disasters. You, for example, are currently attempting to rearrange your borrowed toga after discovering that sitting down in it without strategic folding results in something perilously close to public indecency. The atrium is now filled with the rustling sound of linen. Everyone's adjusting, retying, and in one case, completely surrendering to the idea of toga as scarf. A young man named Marcellus, determined to impress the ladies, has arrived wearing what can only be described as an invisible toga. It's not invisible in the literal sense, of course. It's just so sheer and artfully minimal that it's more suggestion than garment. One servant faints from laughter. You sneak off briefly to the tepidarium, a sort of preheated relaxation room often found near bathhouses, where small bowls of perfumed oil are set out for guests. This is the Roman version of a spa moment, but instead of cucumber water and whale music, there's loud debate over whether olive oil is superior to goat butter for moisturizing elbows. You rub some scented oil on your forearms, only to discover it smells like frankincense mixed with definitely something medicinal. Possibly pickled turnip, possibly rat. Hard to say. Roman perfume chemistry is more of an art than a science. Near the foot of a statue of Diana, a trio of ladies whisper gossip behind feathered fans. You overhear them debating whether Senator Publius's new wig was made. Back in the atrium, entertainment has started early. A man with truly impressive eyebrows is reciting love poetry to a mostly indifferent bowl of grapes. You catch the line, "Oh, pulpy muse of sweetness, ripen not too soon," and silently vow never to eat grapes the same way again. Your Uncle Lucius reappears in dramatically arranged robes, claps for silence, which no one gives him, and declares that dinner will begin shortly. But first, he adds, with a self-satisfied grin, a few words on the tragic decline of Roman moral values. The group groans in unison, though someone applauds sarcastically. Lucius launches into an impromptu lecture about how no one respects the toga anymore. It's a symbol of dignity, of order, he declares, gesturing to Marcellus, who at this point is lying across two cushions like a decorative curtain. We are Romans, not Gauls in pajamas. Historians still debate how seriously Romans took their togas. To some, they were a badge of pride, a cloth and pin ode to civilization. To others, they were an inconvenient napkin draped over the shoulder. Tonight, the consensus leans toward itchy fashion statement. As Lucius blusters on, you drift toward the peristyle garden for some air. The night air is cooler here, scented with rosemary and old marble. Lanterns swing gently. And a cat, no one knows whose, slinks by with the stealth of someone who's definitely not supposed to be at the party, but keeps showing up anyway. You briefly consider following it to see where the real drama is happening, but decide against it. You don't want to get lost in the hypocaust system again, not after last time. Back inside, someone has begun playing the double flute. It's a dissonant sound, like two clarinets arguing over dinner reservations, but it sets the perfect tone for the slowly building chaos. A group of guests are attempting a dance. It's unclear what the choreography is, but everyone looks committed. At least one sandal goes flying, and the pre-dinner phase has served its purpose. Everyone is now either tipsy, suspiciously glittery, or missing one sandal. It's time. Servants begin filing into the triclinium, balancing trays and whispering orders to one another like generals preparing for culinary warfare. A horn sounds, not a grand, brassy blast, but more of a someone blew into the wrong end honk. and Uncle Lucius proudly declares, "To the couches!" As you shuffle toward the dining room, you make a mental checklist. Toga, mostly intact. Wine level, moderate. Dignity, low but sustainable. You are ready. You enter the triclinium with the grace of someone trying not to trip on their own hem. The room is warm, fragrant with roasted herbs, beeswax, and a distinct undertone of anchovies? You blink. No, definitely anchovies. This is where the main feast begins. A grand, reclining chaos of clinking cups, elbow dueling, and the slow descent of every guest into luxurious nonsense. You lower yourself onto one of the couches, each one forming a side of the U-shaped arrangement around a low table overloaded with serving trays. Traditionally, 3 diners share each couch, reclining on their left elbows so their right hands are free to reach for food, which is fine in theory. In practice, it means your head is far too close to the feet of the guest behind you, and you've already elbowed a senator in the ribs trying to reach for an artichoke. A young servant named Minia glides by balancing a silver platter. "Tongue of peacock," she says with the deadpan solemnity of someone who's seen too much. You accept one out of sheer curiosity. It's delicately seared and strangely chewy, with a smoky aftertaste and a garnish that might be parsley or might be symbolic. You don't ask. More dishes arrive in quick succession. Roasted dormice stuffed with pine nuts and honey. Flamingo thighs dusted in cumin. A fish baked in clay, cracked open dramatically by a man with a wooden mallet. Every now and then, a dish is passed around with a warning. Not for the faint of heart, or don't eat the green part. You try a fig, stuffed with sesame and pepper. It's sweet, it's spicy, and it hits the back of your throat like a philosophical surprise. You look across the table to see someone crying from joy or wasabi. It's hard to tell in this lighting. To your left, a retired military officer named Flavius tells a long, mostly invented story about eating wolf stew during the siege of Aquae Sextii. No one believes him, especially since he can't remember what wolf tastes like halfway through the anecdote. Still, you nod politely and pretend to sip your wine. It's good etiquette, after all. Historians still debate whether Roman feasts were truly this excessive every night, or just during festival occasions like Saturnalia. Some argue these elaborate spreads were rare treats. Others say the wealthy treated every dinner as an edible performance. Judging by the literal sparrow pie being wheeled in, you lean toward the latter. The pie is enormous. Flaky crust, golden brown, and filled, supposedly, with live sparrows. You and your neighbors lean forward as a knife slices through the crust. There's a tense pause. No birds. Turns out, the chef forgot to put them in. Lucius shrugs and announces it's now a symbolic pie, which somehow makes it even more confusing. The absence of bird chaos is quickly made up for by a guest who launches an olive pit at another across the table. It bounces off a goblet, rolls into someone's toga, and is declared a divine omen of friendship by Calvina, who's clearly making it up, but doing so with a priestess's authority. And then comes the poetry. As tradition demands, each guest must offer a toast, a riddle, a line of verse, or a mildly embarrassing confession, you're not exempt. Publius goes first. He raises a cup and delivers a painfully long elegy about the fleeting nature of figs. It rhymes, unfortunately. Someone tries to clap and misses. Sabina follows with a short ode to her dog, Scipio Minor, which includes the line, "He sniffs the gods with equal nose." Everyone agrees, it's oddly moving. Your turn. You panic and mutter something about how olives are like friendships, sometimes bitter, sometimes stuffed. There's a pause, and then, to your horror, applause. You're a hit. A man to your right lifts his cup and toasts to the olive philosopher. You take a deep sip and immediately regret it. It's a vintage blend with notes of vinegar, pine, and what might be tears. Down the table, Lucilius the mime stands and begins performing a pantomime of a man discovering a snail in his bath. It is, somehow, deeply tragic and also involves a plate of real snails being passed around. You eat one out of politeness. It tastes like garlic and regret. The courses keep coming. Stuffed pheasant, honey-glazed boar, little pastries shaped like Roman temples. You're full, but social pressure keeps your hand drifting back toward the figs. Someone begins a slow chant, something about Saturn, the harvest, and dancing goats. Another guest, possibly Calvina's cousin, starts tapping a spoon rhythmically against a bronze plate. A servant adds a tambourine. Suddenly, the feast has a soundtrack. The food blends with the music, the laughter, the warm flicker of oil lamps on polished frescoes. You feel both immensely full and deeply relaxed, as if the feast is swallowing time itself. And yet, there's always room for one more bite. Minia returns with a delicate platter of candied rose petals and dates soaked in wine. She leans in conspiratorially and whispers, "Don't eat the middle one." You nod solemnly and take two from the edge. At some point, you lose track of how many courses there have been. The table is a battlefield of crumbs, grape stems, half-eaten quail legs, and poetry napkins. Guests lean into one another, swapping stories, belching without shame, and making increasingly bold claims about their ancestry. You try to stand, but your foot has fallen asleep, and your toga has somehow looped itself around the couch leg. You make eye contact with a dog under the table. He understands. He's seen it all. The feast, you realize, isn't really about the food. It's about the glorious, ridiculous ceremony of it all. The way Roman sleepovers blend pageantry, absurdity, and just enough vinegar to keep you humble. And you, dear sleeper, are right in the middle of it, somewhere between the 6th and 7th course. Though by now, time has lost all meaning. You begin to notice a pattern. The food may be grand, the decor splendid, and the guests more or less upright. But what truly defines this feast is the total, unapologetic lack of manners. There are no forks. Not because they're forgotten, but because they don't exist yet. Instead, everyone's using their fingers, or the occasional two-pronged bronze implement that doubles as a toothpick. You reach for a grape and find your fingers brushing someone else's. Sabina's, probably, and you both giggle like guilty schoolchildren. She waves it off with, "In Saturnalia, all fingers are communal." Someone sneezes. No one says anything. You try to offer a polite salve, but the man just grins and wipes his nose with a bread crust. To your right, Flavius has given up all pretense of delicacy and is now drinking straight from the amphora. It breathes better this way, he insists, dribbling wine onto his tunic and the couch. Lucius laughs like a man who's seen this before. He probably has. Across the table, a woman is loudly cracking walnut shells with her teeth, while her seatmate tries to balance a plum on his nose. When it falls, it hits an exposed foot, and a minor debate breaks out over whether that's an omen of bad harvest or just slippery fruit. Historians still argue whether Roman table etiquette ever really existed outside of philosophical ideals. Some sources suggest upper-class diners prided themselves on elegance, reclining just so and quoting Virgil between bites. Others tell of toga-stained couches, spitting seeds into bowls, and guests who routinely passed out in the triclinium. Tonight, you're inclined to side with the chaos theory. One guest, a young man with more ambition than coordination, attempts to recite a riddle while juggling pickled onions. He gets halfway through before slipping on an errant olive pit and landing with a grunt, his toga tangled like a defeated jellyfish. "Excellent form!" someone shouts. Applause erupts. A servant tosses him another onion as a prize. You're just beginning to think that this might be the height of the madness when a small disagreement flares up between two guests about who was meant to be reclining on the central couch, the place of honor. Apparently, Lucius had promised it to both of them. Now, the argument has escalated to passive-aggressive fig-throwing. A fig smacks your shoulder with a dignified plop. You dab it off with a napkin shaped like a dolphin and pretend nothing happened. In the far corner, two of the house slaves, currently acting as masters for the evening, per Saturnalia tradition, are lecturing a senator on proper drinking technique. The senator listens patiently while sipping wine from a ladle. One of the slaves has donned a laurel crown made of pickled beet leaves and keeps insisting everyone call him Consul Crispus. To your surprise, everyone complies, as if to underline the role reversal theme. Calvina the Haruspex begins blessing people by tapping them on the forehead with a roasted garlic clove. She murmurs something about fertility, but then winks and eats the garlic. Her breath now smells like prophecy and fear. You reach for a honey cake, only to discover it's been sculpted into the shape of a small amphora, complete with icing handles. It's dense, sticky, and inexplicably spicy. You chew it slowly, like someone solving a puzzle. There's a nut in there somewhere, but it's shy. Just as you're contemplating whether you've had your fill, Uncle Lucius rings a small bell. The sound is immediately drowned out by laughter, clapping, and the clatter of someone knocking over a wine jug with their elbow. No one stops eating. Lucius clears his throat and shouts, "This concludes the main course, but now the real feast begins." A pause. Drinking. The crowd roars. You feel your stomach gently protest. But it's Saturnalia. The gods demand cheer, or at least mild intoxication and questionable dancing. One man stands up and shouts, "To Jupiter's sandals!" then drinks half a cup in one gulp. He sits back down, satisfied with his contribution to culture. Another begins humming an off-key tune, and slowly, a handful of guests join in. It's an old military marching song, but with the lyrics changed to be about cheese. You hum along cautiously, trying to catch the rhythm without revealing you have no idea what's happening. By now, the table is littered with remnants, gnawed bones, empty plates, sauce trails, and one perfectly untouched oyster that no one will claim. A lone plum rolls in slow circles near your elbow, like it's looking for a reason to exist. You lean back into your cushion, feeling pleasantly overwhelmed, vaguely sticky, and absolutely convinced you've witnessed something deeply Roman. Not the grand military parades, not the marble temples, but this, a sprawling, messy, glorious indoor circus of food, wine, and olive-fueled philosophy. The laughter continues around you as you close your eyes for a moment. The warmth of the room, the music of clinking cups, and the scent of garum and rosewater blend into a kind of dreamy fog. You drift, briefly, into what might be a nap or a food-induced trance. Someone begins a toast with the phrase, "May all our enemies develop mild rashes," and the night rolls on. There's a certain moment at any Roman sleepover when the food has settled, the togas have loosened, and the guests begin to abandon all remaining pretenses. That moment is usually marked by one very specific phrase. "Drinking games, anyone?" Lucius claps his hands, and suddenly the table is cleared. Not entirely, mind you, but enough that only the most stubborn of plums remain. And a wide, shallow bronze bowl is placed at the center. It's filled with water, wine, and floating nuts. You're not entirely sure if this is a ritual or a snack, possibly both. The first game is Navia Aut Capita, ships or heads, a coin toss betting challenge. Guests bet on whether the specially marked coin lands heads up, capita, or ships up, Navia, which is odd because the Romans hadn't exactly invented detailed coin engraving. The gain is simple, the betting is not. A senator bets his sandals. Someone else bets a sheep, which you suspect isn't his to give. You toss in the contents of your coin pouch, which is mostly lint and hope. Next comes Symposiaca Grammata, the drinking version of an ancient spelling bee. The rules are unclear, possibly improvised, but they involve taking a sip for every mistake in reciting a line of epic poetry backwards. You watch as a man named Sextus forgets halfway through and starts making up words. He's applauded anyway. You're handed a cup, a large one, filled to the brim with a honeyed, heavily diluted wine called mulsum. The flavor is sweet, sour, and vaguely medicinal, like a cough drop having an identity crisis. You sip, trying not to make the "I just drank a beehive" face. No one notices. They're all too busy laughing at Flavius, who has decided the best way to drink is upside down. Yes, upside down. He's lying on his back across two stools, feet in the air, holding the cup above his mouth with both hands and trying to pour it in with the precision of a cat wearing mittens. The results are predictable. The applause is enthusiastic. Calvina the Harrispex declares the wine has now been blessed by Bacchus through accidental libation. She draws a circle in the air and pats Flavius on the head. Historians still debate how common drinking contests were at Roman gatherings. Some records suggest that moderation was an admired virtue, even during festivals. Others describe marathon wine-fueled evenings where guests were judged not by how well they spoke, but by how entertainingly they collapsed. Tonight, you're witnessing the latter, and it's only warming up. Lucillus the Mime returns with a bowl of grapes and challenges a senator to a silent drinking duel. No words, just the clinking of cups. No gestures, only eye contact and sips. It becomes weirdly intense. People gather around, whispering bets. One grape falls. The mime wins. No one knows how. The next game is ephedrismos, a sort of ancient bottle flip, but with a fig and a plate. The goal is to flick the fig from your palm and land it upright on the platter. No one succeeds. Someone loses a fig into a guest's sandals. That guest screams and claims divine possession. The fig is retrieved. It is declared sacred. You find yourself laughing, not just politely, but with real, belly-shaking amusement. It's strange. This is a room full of strangers, eccentric, possibly slightly cursed strangers. But there's something deeply human in all of it. The way everyone leans in. The way laughter ripples through the couches like wind over reeds. The way Lucius is now performing an interpretive toast using only a bronze spoon and dramatic pauses. You raise your own cup and say something ridiculous. May our dreams be weirder than our food. A round of cheers follows. Someone attempts to high-five you, forgets you're reclining, and instead pats you gently on the forehead. Sabina announces it's time for amoeba, the poetic duel. Two guests must alternate improvised lines of verse until one gives up or rhymes Minerva with server. You're roped in. Your opponent is a boy who looks about 12 and already has a better grasp of iambic meter than you ever will. You lose. He's gracious. You suspect he's possessed by a minor muse. You sip more wine. There's a moment of quiet when a guest drops his cup. It bounces once, rolls, and stops perfectly upright. Everyone gasps. Calvina declares it an omen of balance. Lucius declares it time for more wine. Someone starts singing again, softly at first, then louder. It's an old tavern tune about a man who married a fish. You don't understand the lyrics, but the chorus involves slapping the table rhythmically and yelling "Blum," so you catch on quickly. By now, some guests are reclined in artful heaps, like Roman frescoes of victory and defeat. A man to your right is half asleep, murmuring Juno's elbows repeatedly. Another has made a hat out of roasted beet leaves and is trying to recite law code in song form. He's off-key, but passionate. You close your eyes briefly. The wine hums through your blood. The room is warm, soft-edged, pulsing with laughter, flickering light, and distant singing. Somewhere a lyre strums itself to sleep. There is a kind of magic in this stage of the night. A golden, blurry warmth where everyone's slightly ridiculous. No one remembers the rules, and the only goal is to keep laughing. And possibly avoid the upside-down wine man who's trying it again with mead. You've just managed to settle your cup on a nearby tray, though whether that tray was intended for wine or wet figs is unclear. When the next course appears with dramatic flair, the mystery dish. Servants carry in an enormous dome-shaped pie, its crust golden and slightly steaming, dotted with carved decorative leaves and tiny pastry birds perched along the edge. Uncle Lucius stands, sways slightly, definitely the wine, and announces tonight's pièce de résistance, the pavo sorpresum. There's a pause. You whisper to the person beside you, "What's in it?" They shrug and say, "Whatever survived the kitchen." The pie is set in the center of the table. Everyone leans forward with theatrical anticipation. Calvina begins muttering what might be a blessing, or possibly a shopping list. Lucillus the mime mimes suspense with all the drama of a man on the edge of a cliff. With a slow flourish, a servant cuts into the crust. Steam pours out in an elegant puff. For a moment, you imagine a live animal might burst forth in a puff of rosemary. But no, instead, a medley of baked quail, hard-boiled eggs, fish cakes, chestnuts, and a single preserved pear tumble out onto the tray like confused actors at the wrong play. Someone claps. The mystery pie is, apparently, a culinary tradition meant to surprise and delight. Though delight may be a strong word. You tentatively try a spoonful. It's warm, soft, slightly sweet, slightly salty, slightly alarming. Then comes the dormouse debacle. You've heard rumors about this one. The legendary glyers, stuffed dormice, roasted and served as delicacies among Rome's well-fed elite. Tonight, they arrive in small terracotta dishes, each one curled up like a very smug meatball. You peer into your dish. A dormouse baked in honey and rolled in poppy seeds stares back at you with a gaze that says, "I didn't die for this." Historians still argue whether dormice were truly that popular or simply a mark of decadent novelty. Were they gourmet or just weird? Was this the Roman equivalent of eating gold leaf or more like deep-fried Oreos at a fair? The answer may be yes. You hesitantly lift it with 2 fingers. The texture is tender. The flavor, somewhere between chicken and contradiction. You chew slowly, hoping no one asks your opinion. Someone does. You say, "Nutty." They nod, as if that's a compliment. Suddenly, a shout erupts across the room. A guest near the fountain stands up, shouting, "Something just crawled into my sandal." There is immediate panic. Couches shift, platters rattle. A nearby senator screams, "Assassin!" and ducks under the table. The culprit? A live dormouse, a rebellious escapee. It darts through the cushions, disappears behind a curtain, and leaves behind a trail of mystery pie crumbs and existential questions. Calvina, ever composed, raises her wine cup and declares, "It's an omen, a good one. It means the soul seeks freedom." She downs the rest of her wine and burps into her sleeve. Lucius attempts to restore calm. He claps, fails to be noticed, claps again louder, and calls for a palate cleanser. A tray of pickled plums, chilled mint custard, and something involving turnip sorbet is passed around. You try the mint custard. It's like brushing your teeth in the middle of a nap. As the commotion dies down, a servant trips over a lyre case. The instrument releases a sad twang, as though offended. Someone mutters that the house is haunted. Someone else agrees. Lucillus performs a very moving mime of a ghost being confused by indoor plumbing. To distract from the dormouse incident, Another game is proposed. Who can describe the emperor in 5 adjectives without getting arrested? You say generous, serene, probably kind, and then panic. Someone else says chinny. There's a pause, then laughter. Calvina scribbles something in a small notebook you hope never sees daylight. Wine continues to flow. Platters are cleared. Someone begins playing a small reed flute. And the melody, wobbly and a little wet, adds just the right soundtrack to the post-dormouse lull. You sip more wine and let yourself sink deeper into the cushions. You're full. Flavius attempts to stand. His knees make a noise like a collapsing scroll shelf. He bows with surprising grace and declares, "To the dormouse who got away." Everyone drinks to that. The mystery pie sits in the center of the room now, half-eaten, a monument to excess and mild digestive rebellion. You glance at it once more and think, no more. It thinks, we'll see. And in the corner, that dormouse might still be watching as the last crumbs of the mystery pie are pried from various folds in the tablecloth. A soft shift settles over the room. The boisterous energy of dinner has ebbed into something dreamier, loopier, like everyone's drifting down the gentle slope of a very steep hill in slow motion. It's time for what Uncle Lucius dramatically calls the drifting hour. You find yourself led, or possibly wafted, into the villa's more private quarters. A series of smaller rooms and alcoves furnished with overstuffed cushions, sculpted oil lamps, and absurdly detailed mosaics of mythological scenes. One room shows Bacchus riding a panther. Another, rather more confusingly, shows Cupid losing a game of dice and throwing a tantrum. Guests pair off or drift into trios, falling naturally into gossip alcoves, semi-curtained lounging areas, perfect for half-whispered scandals and full-bellied chuckles. You settle beside a low bronze brazier that smells faintly of cinnamon and bad decisions. Sabina, the moon-speaking poetess, flops onto a cushion beside you and immediately launches into a tale of how she once tried to marry a Sicilian sailor who claimed to be descended from Odysseus. He snored in hexameter, she sighs dreamily. That's how I knew it was real. In another corner, Flavius is now wearing 2 togas, both backwards, and giving what he insists is a reenactment of the Battle of Actium, using only sock puppets and wine-stained napkins. "Here comes Cleopatra," he yells, waving a napkin dramatically. She's very emotional. The sock puppets don't help, but the crowd is riveted. Nearby, a pair of younger guests are arranging cushions into a crude amphitheater for an impromptu Aeneid performance. One plays Aeneas with an overbite. The other, Dido, with an unfortunate wig made from dried fig leaves and string. Their version includes a lengthy argument about real estate and a dramatic fall into a bean jar. Historians still puzzle over what kinds of after-dinner amusements truly occurred in elite Roman households. Written records focus more on banquets and rituals, but archaeological finds, a dice cup carved with rude inscriptions, wall paintings of musicians and dancers, and graffiti detailing the rules of a lost board game called Latrunculi, suggests that Romans, like you, filled their evenings with games, gossip, and strange but heartfelt theater. You're handed a cushion shaped like a miniature temple, complete with embroidered columns, and invited to join a game of which god would you date? The rules are simple. Pick a deity. Make your case. Sabina chooses Mars for the drama. Someone picks Mercury for the fast getaways. You, feeling clever, choose Terminus, god of boundaries. Low commitment, you say. Laughter erupts. Calvina drifts in, now barefoot, and declares she's seen a vision of Saturn blessing the house. He was wearing a chef's apron, she adds, and no pants. No one questions it. A young servant turned guest named Spurious plays a slow, drowsy tune on a cithara in the corner. The strings hum like moth wings, blending with the soft clinking of wine cups and the sleepy murmurs of scandal. Somewhere in the villa, a clay lamp flickers dramatically, casting dancing shadows of Venus on a stucco wall. You wander briefly to another alcove, this one hung with gauzy curtains and lit by a lamp shaped like a reclining boar. Two women are whispering about Lucius's latest business deal, something involving bricks, Etruscans, and a scandalously underfunded aqueduct. You nod along like you understand the intricacies of municipal water supply. You do not. A bowl of dried cherries appears. You take one. It tastes like sleep and vinegar. Your favorite alcove might be the one near the library. A narrow nook with scrolls stacked sideways, a marble bust of Cicero with grapes in his nostrils, and a single guest passed out face down in a copy of On Duties. You leave him undisturbed. He looks happy. Lucilius the mime appears again, now in full Cupid costume. Tunic, wings, and a slightly askew laurel crown. He silently offers tiny candy hearts to everyone, making smooching noises with exaggerated lips. You accept one. It says Veni, Vidi, Snacksy. This is the part of the evening where reality softens. The wine, the flickering light, the rustle of fabric and laughter. It all begins to blend together into a kind of tapestry. Conversations start to loop. Someone tells the same story twice, slightly wrong the second time. No one minds. You curl further into your cushion, feeling like a satisfied cat. A gentle heat radiates from the floor. Lucius must have lit the hypocaust, the underfloor heating system. It hums gently, like a sleeping dragon with good manners. Someone proposes truth or dare, Roman style. The truths involve oddly personal questions about stolen statues, misused oracles, and romantic entanglements with toga vendors. The dares include impersonating senators and singing like a satyr. It all ends with a man in his 60s attempting to balance grapes on his nose while reciting Ovid. He does not succeed. He is cheered anyway. In the far corner, someone is building a fort out of scrolls and tunics. You briefly consider joining. You don't, but you're glad it exists. The air grows thicker with candle smoke and citrus peel. The gossip has become whispers. The reenactments, mere giggles. Even Flavius has run out of sock puppets. You lean back, letting your head rest against the cool plaster wall. The cushion beneath you smells like thyme and candle wax. You hear the slow rise and fall of nearby breath. Someone asleep already, snoring softly. A final cithara chord strums the air like a curtain falling. Somehow, you're still awake, but only just. You're not sure when the after-dinner entertainment officially begins. Probably because it never really stops. It just mutates. One moment you're listening to someone recite poetry in a whisper-soft voice, and the next, someone is juggling figs while standing on a stool and declaring war on gravity. Lucius, ever the host, claps loudly and calls for evening diversions with the enthusiasm of a man who just remembered he has guests and a budget. Servants shuffle into the room carrying trays of props, silk scarves, bronze cymbals, masks shaped like theatrical muses, and a very small lyre that looks like it could be played only by a particularly dexterous squirrel. From nowhere appears a young man with dramatically arched eyebrows who bows and introduces himself as Flavian the Expressive. "I interpret taxes," he says with a flourish, "through dance. You blink." He begins. First, a trembling toe-pointed solo to symbolize the burden of the grain levy. He spins once, collapses, and lies motionless for a full 10 seconds before popping up again to mime the despair of the olive tariff. Someone claps too early and is shushed. A single tear rolls down his cheek as he flaps his arms like a disgruntled debtor. It's oddly moving. And then someone sneezes and ruins everything. Flavius, inspired by the moment, offers to juggle figs of fate. He's handed 3 overripe figs and begins tossing them into the air while reciting a poem about Jupiter's beard. One fig immediately splats against a statue of Minerva. Another hits the ceiling. The last one sticks to his forehead like a badge of honor. He bows deeply. You all cheer like he's invented flight. A servant rolls in a low wooden cart topped with small puppets, papier-mâché heads with painted expressions of joy, terror, and what you assume is indigestion. 2 boys begin a short play about the founding of Rome, but with the twist that Romulus and Remus are arguing over who gets the nicer pillow. The wolf makes a cameo demanding a pension. Everyone laughs. Calvina then rises, swaying slightly. She has donned a wreath made entirely of laurel and garlic cloves. "We shall summon the spirit of joy," she announces. He's shy, but I'm persuasive. She lights a small brass burner filled with what smells like crushed herbs and honey. The smoke wafts through the air in dreamy curls, and she begins chanting in a mixture of Latin, Etruscan, and what might be advanced humming. A hush falls over the room, not out of fear, but from the collective curiosity of people who've eaten too much and will now believe anything. You glance at Lucilius the mime, who is slowly miming the growth of a flower. It's gentle, surprisingly calming. Behind you, someone begins plucking at the cithara again, this time with a slower, more deliberate rhythm. The music lulls like water over smooth stones. A servant joins in with finger cymbals, tapping them with sleepy precision. You find yourself lying back against your cushion, half listening to a reading from Ovid's Metamorphoses. The voice is soft, winding, full of breathy pauses and accidental rhymes. You catch bits and pieces, lovers turning into trees, rivers talking back, gods with identity crises. It all feels strangely appropriate. Lucius tries to join in with a dramatic retelling of the time he outwitted a rival senator using only a banana and a map of Crete. He loses the thread halfway through, but keeps going. The audience is invested, despite having no clue what's happening. A soft bell chimes. Possibly a real bell, possibly someone's decorative hat falling off, and signals the end of the performances. You feel a shift again. The laughter has become quieter, more like ripples than waves. People stretch, yawn, rearrange their limbs. Someone whispers, "I think my feet have fallen asleep." Someone else replies, "Tell them I said goodnight." One guest wanders over to the mural of Dionysus and begins tracing the outline with a fig stem. "He looks tired," they murmur. "He probably just wants a nap." You agree. There is something tender in the way the evening deflates, like a great beast curling into slumber. The flames in the oil lamps have sunk lower, flickering with a kind of cozy finality. A half-finished tray of raisins sits abandoned next to an overturned goblet. The sock puppets lie on their sides, their small yarn mouths slack with exhaustion. Lucius raises a final toast. To whatever that was, you lift your cup to misremembering it fondly. You don't remember standing up, but somehow you're following a slow-moving train of guests toward the balneum, the villa's private bathhouse. Pause. The idea, someone mumbles, is to relax before sleeping. Wash off the crumbs of dignity. Pause. Steam the wine from your pores. Possibly find out who still believes in nymphs after midnight. Pause. The path is lined with flickering oil lamps, each casting sleepy halos against the walls. Pause. You pass under a fresco of Apollo holding a towel. He looks smug. You nod respectfully, just in case. Inside, the air is thick with steam and citrus. The tiles beneath your feet are warm, blessed hypocist, and the soft gurgle of running water echoes through the marble arches like a lullaby. A servant hands you a linen cloth and a small, polished striggle. You pretend you know how to use it. The first room, the tepidarium, is warm and dim. Everyone settles onto stone benches as if they've arrived at an ancient sauna support group. Lucius claps his hands. "Let us sweat in the name of Saturn." Someone sneezes. No one blesses them this time. You begin scraping the oil from your skin, using the strigil, which feels a bit like buttering toast backwards. It's oddly satisfying, though. The servant offers a small dish of perfumed oil to replace the one you just scraped off. The cycle is eternal. Next, the caldarium, the hot room, a domed chamber of thick mist, with a sunken bath in the center that gleams like melted topaz. Guests lower themselves into the water with a variety of noises, sighs, grunts, philosophical groans. One man quotes Plato as he sinks in, then immediately slips and yells something very unplatonic. You ease into the bath. The water wraps around you like a sleepy snake, warm and reassuring. The scent is a blend of lavender, thyme, and something faintly metallic, probably the plumbing. You close your eyes. Somewhere, someone is humming. Possibly the same person who made the fig balancing joke earlier. They've evolved. Beside you, Flavius attempts to start a ghost story. It was on a night just like this, he begins, his voice echoing dramatically. Everyone leans in. In a villa just like this one, someone coughs. The water ripples. That a man was visited by the spirit of an unpaid tax collector. you snort. So does Lucillus the mime, who's acting out the tax collector using nothing but eyebrow movement and aggressive towel folding. Flavius carries on. The ghost demanded spreadsheets in triplicate. It's not exactly terrifying, but it gets a laugh, then a chuckle, then a full, echoing laugh that makes your shoulders shake and your wine memory hiccup. Someone splashes water accidentally. A tiny wave hits the opposite wall. Someone else tries to retaliate with a playful flick and nearly loses their towel. You shield your face and your modesty. The bath devolves briefly into a splash war until Calvina raises a hand and solemnly warns that water spirits dislike drama. The splashing stops immediately. Historians still argue about the bathhouse's social role. Was it a place for hygiene? For politics? For romance? Tonight, it's a steamy wonderland of nonsense and barely contained giggles and scrubby sponges. A man near the steps is vigorously polishing his knee while humming the imperial anthem. A young woman balances a citrus peel on her forehead, declaring herself Queen of Lemons. She's immediately applauded and crowned with a second peel. You bow to her. It feels right. You move into the frigidarium, the cold bath, because you've been dared. The water is glacial, arctic, a betrayal of everything you just experienced. You yelp softly and sink to your chin like a frog trying not to panic. It helps, maybe. Your brain starts writing poetry about icicles and poor choices. Then the towel room. Warm linens, honeyed figs, soft sandals. Lucius is offering everyone foot oil. You don't ask questions, you accept the oil. Back in the changing room, everyone is slow moving now, as if the steam melted their bones. Someone wraps themselves entirely in a sheet and declares they are Alar, the household spirit, and shall haunt the triclinium until further notice. You pass a mirror. Your hair is wild. Your eyes are sleepy. Your cheeks are flushed with heat and mirth and a little wine. You look like someone who just lived through a very Roman fever dream. You feel like one too. A servant hands you a cup of mulled wine for warmth. You thank him and sip. It's warm, spiced, and deeply unnecessary in the best way. As you shuffle out into the night air, the stars are sharper than before. The sky is velvet dark, and a breeze stirs the tops of the cypress trees. The bathhouse behind you glows like an ancient lantern. The rest of the guests are making their way towards sleeping quarters. You follow slowly, wrapped in a blanket that smells faintly of thyme, candle wax, and victory. You have been steamed, scrubbed, splashed, scented, and serenaded. You have officially survived the Roman bath. You've never seen a guest room quite like this one. The sleeping quarters, tucked along the villa's eastern wing, feel like a cross between a museum, a linen closet, and a minor battlefield. Every room is stuffed with guests, blankets, borrowed pillows, and the occasional prop from earlier performances. You spot Lucillus's Cupid wings poking out from beneath a couch. There's no assigned seating, or sleeping in this case. It's first come, first cushioned. The goal is simple. Find somewhere to lie down, where you're not on top of someone else's toga or emotionally entangled with their snoring. You wander through a narrow hallway, where soft lamplight flickers across faded frescoes of nymphs lounging in olive groves. You pass a side room where 3 people are already asleep, spooning a bronze statue of Apollo. One of them mumbles, "He promised me eternal poetry," and then snores again. In the main sleeping chamber, chaos reigns with the gentlest energy possible. Some guests are constructing pillow nests. Others are having hushed arguments over whose cushion is softer. Someone is making a blanket fort using a broom and a toga and insists it's sacred. No one challenges them. You eye a vacant spot near the wall, next to a soft pile of woven blankets and a marble bust of Cicero wearing a sock as a hat. Perfect. Just as you're settling in, you're joined by a man named Decimus, who introduces himself as a former junior magistrate and current prophet of bedtime. He's wearing one sandal, an expression of quiet determination, and a blanket tied around his shoulders like a senator's cape. "This is my spot," he says. "I was here in spirit." You raise an eyebrow. "Were you?" "I manifested it." Rather than argue, you offer to share the space, and he agrees under the condition that he's allowed to sleep facing east for dream alignment. Of course, historians still puzzle over Roman sleeping arrangements. Villas often had guest rooms, but large gatherings like Saturnalia likely forced guests to improvise. Some would have slept in the triclinium itself, others in garden alcoves, and some, probably the wisest, under the table with the leftover dessert tray. In the corner, Sabina has gathered 3 guests around her for a last-minute love horoscope reading. She drops olive pits onto a cloth and announces, "You will fall in love with a very quiet person who smells of vinegar." The recipient beams. Meanwhile, Flavius has taken it upon himself to guard the hallway. He wears a helmet made from a fruit bowl and carries a pillow like a shield. "No nightmares shall pass," he cries. Calvina blesses him with a yawn. You lay back, wrapping yourself in a borrowed woolen blanket. It smells faintly of sheep and lavender. Your borrowed cushion is slightly lumpy, but plink, plink, plink. Decimus murmurs, "It's a sign. The gods are speaking." You whisper, "They're telling us to install shutters." The wind chime isn't the only culprit. Somewhere nearby, a magistrate is snoring with all the thunder of a collapsing coliseum. Deep, honking inhalations, punctuated by occasional whinnies, as though his nose is reenacting the Punic Wars in Morse code. You shift onto your side. The floor is cold through the cushion. Your foot finds the edge of a wine goblet. You shift again. In the hallway, someone knocks over a tray of dates. Plink, snore, scrape, silence. Then the wind chime again. In the hallway, someone knocks over a tray of dates. Plink, snore, scrape, silence. Then the wind chime again. Calvina mumbles something about binding the chime with sacred string. No one volunteers to fetch the string. You try counting sheep, but the sheep are wearing togas and debating land taxes, so it's not helpful. The floor creaks as someone tiptoes past. You hear the distinct thud of a toe meeting furniture, followed by a whispered curse and a long pause of existential regret. The chime pauses, Hope flickers. Then, plink. The silence between each sound is the worst part. It teases you, promises peace, then plinks again. A cruel lullaby, forged by petty gods. You find yourself drifting, not towards sleep, but into that strange state between wakefulness and dreams, where the wind chime becomes a centurion tapping his shield, and the snore is a Roman dragon. Not a real thing, but your brain has made one, grumbling in its cave. Eventually, you stop resisting. The noises blur. The blanket is warm. The bronze chime becomes the rhythm of Saturn breathing. The snores fade into the background like distant temple chants. And finally, you begin to sleep. You wake, not with a start, but with a soft, confused flutter, like a scroll unrolling itself gently in the sun. The room is dark, but not silent. Shadows ripple across the walls from flickering lamps that must have burned through most of the night. Someone sighs nearby. Someone else murmurs something about borrowed pillows and stolen destinies. And then you hear it, chanting, very soft, very slow, very unsettling. You lift your head, still wrapped like a human burrito in your woolen blanket, and peer across the dim room. There's movement near the doorway. A group of guests, 5, 6, draped in extra togas and carrying small oil lamps. They're whispering in a circle, their hands joined, their voices rising in sing-song Latin. One holds a scroll. You blink. This is happening. You quietly nudge Decimus, who opens one eye and says, "Oh, they're doing it again." Doing what? The summoning. You stare. Of what? He shrugs. Last year, it was a minor river deity. We had excellent rainfall for weeks, but someone lost a sandal. You sit up fully now, the blanket tumbling from your shoulders like a defrocked senator. The summoners chant in a careful rhythm, stepping slowly around a mosaic tile that features a smug-looking Mercury. The lamplight casts shadows like dancing satyrs across the ceiling. One of them places the rooster bread in the center of the room, lights a sprig of rosemary, and begins humming. Calvina raises both arms. "O Saturn, slow-footed lord of time and barley," she intones. "We ask you for..." She pauses. Everyone leans in. "A better grain harvest and slightly improved digestion." You can't argue with that. They begin the circle again. This time they're walking backwards, which is probably a sacred thing, or maybe just the wine. One nearly steps on Lucillus the Mime, who's sleeping face down on a scroll titled "On Farming." As the chanting intensifies, mildly, a breeze sweeps in through the open shutter. The bronze wind chime stirs, as if adding its own lazy harmony to the ritual. Plink. Saturn must be pleased. Suddenly, the lamp in the center flickers violently. Everyone gasps. The rooster bread catches fire. Everyone really gasps. Calvina shouts, "It's a sign!" Decimus whispers, "It's a carb emergency." The bread flames sputter. A guest throws wine on it. The fire dies with a hiss, a puff of steam, and the scent of tragic brunch. The room is filled with the smell of scorched wheat and rosemary. and a strange, electrified quiet. Then someone sneezes. The spell is broken. A soft chorus of laughter follows. No hysteria, no panic. Just the chuckling of well-fed people who almost summon something they wouldn't know what to do with anyway. Calvina smiles serenely. Saturn has heard us. Lucius, now upright in sleep-must, stumbles into the room holding a sandal in one hand and a cup of warm wine in the other. Did I miss the barley blessing? A voice from the floor replies, "Only the part where we almost awakened the patron god of awkward timing." Lucius nods. Fair enough. Historians still debate the seriousness of these kinds of household rituals. Were they playful? Were they genuinely spiritual? Or did they simply provide a socially acceptable excuse to burn bread at 4 in the morning? The answer, most likely, is yes. You shuffle back toward your cushion. Your feet are cold now, and the warmth of your blanket calls to you like a siren in a sheepskin shawl. You lie down again, curl inward, and feel your limbs sigh with relief. The room is settling once more. Someone is humming softly, probably a lullaby, or maybe the last line of the summoning chant. A servant sneaks in with a fresh oil lamp and tiptoes back out with the grace of a trained panther. Above you, the bronze wind chime swings gently, its tone lower now, more of a clink than a plink, as if even it is sleepy. You hear Decimus whisper, "We're blessed now, definitely." You murmur, "We're also flammable." He nods and pulls the blanket higher over his nose. And just like that, the strange calm returns. No more chanting. No more roasted bread sacrifices. Just the soft rustle of limbs settling, of dreams reattaching to their hosts, and of one goat bleating distantly from the stables, as if to say, "I told you not to trust the rosemary." You close your eyes. This time, you're ready to fall. When you finally wake again, it's impossible to tell what time it is. The light in the room has changed. Dim still, but grayer, quieter, as if the sun is just starting to contemplate rising, but hasn't yet committed. You stir under your blanket, and it clings to you like wet laundry, warm and slightly sticky with the scent of wool, ash, and last night's rosemary. All around, the other guests lie tangled in their own sleep nests, half in togas, half out, snoring like small orchestras tuning up. One man is wrapped head to toe in a curtain he probably mistook for a divine shroud. Sabina is talking in her sleep about the moon's legal rights. Lucillus the mime is perfectly still, but manages to look dramatic anyway. Then you hear it, the wind chime. Plink, you freeze. Plink, plink, it's louder than before, braver, emboldened by your groggy vulnerability. Plink, you groan into your blanket and will your limbs to return to dreamland. But they have other ideas. Your arm itches. Your foot is too hot. There's something very small and suspiciously round lodged under your hip. Possibly a raisin, possibly a philosophical dilemma. Either way, it's not comfortable. You sit up, hair flattened on one side, toga dangerously disheveled. You adjust it with the weary dignity of someone who has just slept through a minor deity summoning and a burned bread ritual. The wind chime is still going. You stare at it. You consider diplomacy. Then fire. Then just acceptance. Decimus, still beside you, opens one eye. "It's one," he mutters, Just let it have the morning. You nod solemnly. The chime plinks again, as if in smug agreement. The servant peeks in, carrying a tray of honeyed barley cakes and warm water in clay cups. He looks at the sleeping pile of guests, the soft clatter of sandals following his quiet steps, and sighs the deep sigh of one who knows exactly how this goes. "Good morning, honored guests," he whispers. "You've survived." You take a cup, sip. It's warm, slightly sweet, and deeply restorative. You feel the very cells in your body waking up and filing small complaints about the dormouse, the fig juggling, and the bread inferno. Nearby, a guest begins to stir. It's the senator who insisted on sleeping in a doorway to feel more democratic. He sits up, sneezes directly into a curtain, and says, "Ah, the blessings of Saturn." Calvina enters next, barefoot and smiling. "It's to chase out lingering spirits," she explains, "and also to mask the cheese. Because yes, there is a definite cheese aroma. Not fresh cheese, mind you. The kind of cheese that's developed ambitions, a legacy, possibly a legal identity. You spot the culprit, a wedge of something goat-based, melting slowly near the window. No one moves to claim it. Historians still speculate about Roman morning routines, especially after long nights. Some say the elite greeted the dawn with structured prayers and cleansing rituals. Others argue they grumbled, reached for olives, and swore off wine for at least a week. A resolution likely to expire by lunch. You lean against the wall and nibble the barley cake. It's dense, sticky, and oddly comforting. A food designed to absorb mistakes. Sabina stirs, stretches, and immediately launches into a monologue about dreaming she married a sphinx who refused to answer her riddles. A man wrapped in a curtain stumbles by, salutes a potted plant, and wanders out mumbling something about anchovy futures. It's all strangely peaceful. Someone picks up the cithara and strums a few morning notes. Not music, really, more like tonal yawns. A few guests begin packing up their things, stray sandals, half-finished scrolls, one very fancy sock puppet with a pearl sewn on its face. Lucius re-enters, looking like a man who has no regrets, but probably should. His laurel crown is now wilted, and he's missing one eyebrow. He raises a cup and says, "My friends, if you remember even half of what happened last night, that's too much." Polite applause. He continues, "Breakfast will be served in the garden. Leftover figs and philosophical remorse. Wear whatever's clean. You make a mental note to eat the fig before the remorse." Lucilius the mime offers a final gesture. Arms wide, palms up, head bowed. A mime's goodbye. Poetic, slightly confusing. The room empties slowly. You linger, sipping the last of your barley water. The wind chime, as if sensing the moment's end, gives a final plink. You nod to it. Well played, wind chime. Well played. The villa's garden, normally quiet and statuesque, now hums with the groggy shuffle of guests in the gentle disarray of post-Saturnalia survival. You step into the crisp morning air, blankets still draped around your shoulders, like the robe of an emperor who has seen things. Real things, like flaming bread and philosophical sock puppets. The garden is enclosed by tall columns and creeping ivy. A faint mist clings to the hedges, and the fountain in the center trickles a steady rhythm that could lull you right back to sleep if your stomach weren't beginning to growl. Breakfast, such as it is, awaits on a long stone table set with bowls of olives, figs both fresh and suspicious, barley cakes, and a selection of cured meats that look like they were aged in a philosopher's closet. There's also a jar of honey the size of a baby goat and a loaf of bread shaped like a turtle. No one questions the turtle. You join the slow procession of guests, most of whom are wrapped in blankets, togas, or whatever fabric they could grab on their way out of the sleep hall. You spot Flavius asleep, upright on a bench, clutching a pear and muttering, "Tell Brutus I never meant to steal the jam." Calvina floats past you, now adorned with a fresh wreath of mint and what appears to be a baby sandal. "The spirits are satisfied," she whispers. "No one summoned a god we can't uninvite." You nod and pick up a fig. It's warm from the early sun and soft in the hand. One bite and your jaw unclenches like an old scroll. It's sweet, very sweet, possibly too sweet. You eat it anyway. The conversation around the garden is low and musical. Half-voiced recollections, dreamy giggles, and the occasional bark of someone remembering they left their good sandals in the caldarium. A group of guests gathers under a laurel tree, trying to piece together what exactly happened during the summoning. Did the lamp really go out on its own? Was the rooster bread actually levitating or just jiggling from the wind? No one can agree, but all are content in the not knowing. Historians still debate the accuracy of Roman accounts from festivals like Saturnalia. The line between actual events and socially acceptable hallucination is a blurry one, made foggier by endless wine and a complete lack of video evidence. What's clear is this: the stories survived because people wanted to remember them. And just as importantly, how they remembered them was half the fun. You sit down on a cool marble bench next to Sabina, who's busy writing a poem on a fig leaf with charcoal. She reads aloud, "O fig of dawn, soft as Saturn's sigh, I eat you now and ask not why." You applaud. She bows. Across the garden, someone offers a toast, though it's just water in a cup now. "To memory," they say, "and to remembering it better than it happened." Lucius stumbles in a moment later with a satchel full of amphora labels and no explanation. He dumps them on the table, says "evidence of greatness," and proceeds to butter a piece of toast with a wine cork. No one stops him. You're handed a cup of something warm and herbal. It tastes like licorice, regret, and mild hope. You sip it slowly, watching the garden wake along with its guests. A cat appears on the wall, tail flicking, and judges you silently for still wearing your blanket. One guest is reading a scroll aloud that no one asked for. Another is sketching the bronze wind chime from memory. Someone's trying to organize the leftover sandals by owner, but has resorted to making a small shrine instead. You wonder what the villa will look like tomorrow. Tidied, quiet, pretending none of this happened. The mosaics will go back to being just decorations. The couches will forget they were stages. The wind chime will return to its usual mid-afternoon plink instead of its chaos-conducting dawn concert. But for now, everything is still gently strange. You walk through the garden once more, past the citrus trees and sleeping statues, carrying your last fig. The air smells of time, fresh bread, and sun-warmed linen. The kind of scent that makes you believe anything could happen, or that maybe everything already did. Your feet carry you toward the edge of the gathering. Some guests have begun to doze again, curled like cats in patches of sun. The laughter has faded into hums and contented sighs. Someone is gently strumming a lyre, just a few notes, like a lullaby that forgot the rest of the tune. You find your cushion near a sunny wall and settle back into it. Your blanket is warm again, the fig gone, your stomach pleasantly full. You close your eyes, and just as sleep begins to press down on you like a soft marble lid, plink, the wind chime again. You smile. That's fair. You don't remember falling asleep in the garden, but you definitely remember waking up. It's not abrupt, just quiet. A hush that seeps into your skin. The kind of silence that doesn't demand anything of you, just invites you to exist, blanketed in early sunlight and the warm scent of time still lingering from someone's sandals. You're curled in your corner, blanket gently rising and falling with your breath. A lemon tree to your left, the empty fig plate to your right, and one of Lucilius the Mime's cupid wings resting gently across your legs. How it got there is a mystery, a gentle one. Around you, the last of the guests are beginning to stir, groggily, lazily, like olives rolling in a pan. Flavius is sitting upright, with a beet slice stuck to his cheek, blinking at a pigeon as if they've met before. Calvina is meditating, probably, though it might just be the after effects of herbal wine. The villa is slower now, like an old lion stretching in the sun. No more chanting, no more flaming pastry rituals, just the clinking of breakfast trays being cleared, and the soft flap of laundry being hung somewhere out of sight. You rise slowly, your blanket trailing behind you like a toga made of dreams. The breeze ruffles your hair, and for a moment, you feel entirely timeless, part of something ancient and ridiculous and oddly sacred. Uncle Lucius reappears in the garden, wearing his own blanket like a toga of triumph. "Did anyone find my dignity?" he calls. Someone tosses him a raisin. He shrugs and eats it. There's a strange beauty in the aftermath. No one's rushing to leave. No one's pretending the night didn't happen. There's just the soft murmur of guests saying goodbye, with shoulder squeezes, and "We really must do this again, but less edible fire next time." You gather your things, what little you brought and what you may have accidentally acquired, like a scroll titled "How to Survive Philosophy with Only a Spoon." You slip it into your satchel. It seems important. A final cup of honeyed barley water. A last look at the wind chime, now mercifully still. A smile shared with the goat in the stable, who bleats at you with a tone that says, "Come back soon or don't. It's all the same to me." And then you're walking out of the villa, down the dusty path toward the horizon. The cypress trees wave you off like old friends, and the sun, not yet cruel, drapes everything in soft gold. You made it. You survived the ancient Roman sleepover. You were a guest at Saturnalia. You may never fully understand what happened, or why there was a sock puppet version of Dido crying into a cheese wheel. But that's the beauty of it. You were there, and now you rest. You're still walking the path in your mind, aren't you? The gravel crunches beneath your sandals, your blanket still wrapped around your shoulders like a sleepy toga, and the breeze carries that familiar scent: lavender, warm wine, distant olive smoke. Everything behind you is quieter now, fading, the laughter, the songs, the rustling of togas during midnight fig duels. Gone is the chime, the goat, the poet, asleep in the scroll cupboard. Even the stars that watched over your night have dimmed, slipping behind the edge of the sky like ancient spectators nodding off at last. And now you, dear traveler, can drift as well. Let your limbs grow heavier. Let your thoughts stretch like wax melting in the sun. You've walked through marble halls and mosaic floors. You've dined beneath frescoed ceilings. And you've survived the rituals of a Roman night no historian could quite explain. You've seen gods summoned over burnt pastry. You've watched a senator arm wrestle a mime. And now you breathe in. The fig tree whispers. You breathe out. The world softens. So give in to it. Let your eyelids fall like amphora lids. Let your mind slip gently into dreams that smell of time and candle wax and ancient laughter. And if you hear the wind chime once more, just once, softly, like a coin spinning to rest, know it's only Saturn chuckling and letting you go. Sleep well, traveler.